Thanks for coming out. I want to talk to you today. We've got 3 assets. Put the company together 2.5 years ago, looking for assets. Initially went to the DRC, realized it was no place for a junior. It's barely a place for a major, frankly. And our asset base is comprised of just a fabulous asset in Idaho that I'll talk about a little bit, our flagship mineral asset, some properties in Ontario. And the real story for us this year is our refinery. We're looking to recommission a refinery in Ontario and bring the first supply of refined cobalt to America, specifically sulfate product for the automotive sector. So here's a little bit about who we are and why I'd suggest we're something to keep on your screen. We got cash flow in as early as 1 year out. If you don't believe in EVs, you certainly wouldn't be looking at us at all. And we've got some great leverage, refinery and then the mineral assets, none of which are in the DRC or in Africa proper. The board leadership team, I come out of the mining, the majors. I worked at Barrick, I've worked at Sherritt, I've worked in palladium, gold, nickel. Same thing with my whole team. First Quantum, Inmet, Falcon Bridge, kind of the pedigree of the management team. Board's a little more diversified. EV entrepreneur Henrik Fisker, former Idaho governor, Butch Otter, and then some industry veterans. A little bit about who we are, some research out of 8 Capital and Canaccord Genuity. Pretty big share structure. We acquired an Australian company. We've done a fair bit of M&A. At some point we'll address that, but that's for another day. We're well capitalized for the time being. And in terms of who we are, when cobalt went on a tear in 2017, that's when this company came together. Through some M&A transactions, 4 companies became one. It gave us the scale, and as cobalt did a pretty sharp sell-off in 2018 and early 2019, we went from about 100 cobalt plays sort of in the market to maybe a half dozen, including ourselves. And so we've got some staying power, but the real catalyst for us over the last 4 or 5 months has been an announcement to partner with Glencore to bring this refinery that you see here back to life. It's been on care and maintenance for about 4 years. It was built in '96, so as these buildings go, this is a fairly modern facility. Importantly, it's a hydrometallurgical facility, which means rather than burning stuff off, you're putting everything into solution. And it's proven to be very effective for the world's most abundant supply of feed out of the DRC. And therein lies the opportunity for us as we were looking at this refinery, and you can see the inside here. It's 5 hours north of Toronto. How do you bring this back into production and get cash flowing when there are no North American cobalt mines in operation today? The nearest one is probably a couple of years away. And when you look at this, you see power, you got the roads, the building. And when you think of a new mine, you spend $200, $300, $400 million or more. Your first risk is the mine plan. The second risk is the infrastructure and the capex blowout you can have when you start putting these things together. In our case, everything is here, including the tailings and probably most important of all of the permits. What we don't have is feedstock. And so what we did, and you look at the other way, lots of land. We're right next to a community, huge body of water and great community support. This is in just outside the town of Cobalt, aptly named for what we're trying to do. And so for us, what we did, absent domestic feedstock, is we got our hands on some cobalt hydroxide feed out of the DRC. And so just to clarify, the cobalt that we saw, most of the cobalt we get is a byproduct out of the copper mines, the African copper belt, mostly the DRC. They produce a copper cathode, and then they take their cobalt byproduct, which is pretty significant, and they get it half processed. They get it to a hydroxide stage. And all of that product then goes to China. China's got 60% of refining capacity worldwide, 80% of this product, the cobalt sulfate market. And this is what's on the president's, the White House's agenda right now in terms of critical minerals and how do we bring security supply to our continent. So we got our hands on it, and again, with our flow sheet, hydrometallurgical, putting everything into solution, proved to be actually easier than it has been historically to treat domestic feedstocks. Domestic feedstocks, the concentrates are lower grade. Invariably, they're fairly arsenic rich, so it's a slightly more capital-intensive process and a slower process to separate out the cobalt. In this case, first pass bench scale testing, we got battery-grade cobalt in a very high purity. And so with that, we engaged Ausenco and we asked them to do a scoping study on our facility. And what you will see, if I got a light here, well, the building, there we go. No, it's not going to show. The building that you see coming down towards the lower left, that's the refinery building, and then the smaller, sort of fatter building to the bottom right is an empty warehouse. Used to be a mill. So the idea is to use that footprint to get rid of the autoclaves, or at least take them off circuit because we don't need them for this feedstock, and to try to maximize throughput without having to pour concrete or put up a new building. So use the existing footprint of the facility. And so we go from a 12-ton-a-day facility using conventional domestic feedstock to 55 tons, and the production capabilities here, about 5,000 tons of cobalt in a refined product, in a sulfate. Operating costs, again, scoping study level, are competitive with China. And with that, we then started marketing this idea of a refinery that can treat material out of the DRC. So who are the parties? It's a lot of Chinese parties. It's Glencore and it's ERG. So after a bit of I guess a mating season with all the different parties, we landed, frankly, with our preferred candidate, Glencore. We're located 2 hours away from their Sudbury smelting operations. We're less than 2 hours away from their copper smelter at the Horn. And where we have landed with them is to look, take the scoping study that you did, take the met work, and let's get it to a definitive feasibility level of certainty. So they've advanced $5 million. We're in the middle of the facility now. We've got field crews at that refinery, turned the power back on. We're testing all the equipment just to get a sense for what the replacement parts might be and upgrades and a little bit more certainty on the capital. And we've got now material from Glencore that we're testing on a metallurgical basis. And so, if all goes according to plan, the idea will be to publish this feasibility study in Q1 of next year. So it's just a few months away. And then we get to a go, no-go decision, and feel confident based on what we're seeing right now that we'll replicate what we have published at a scoping study level. The idea for both parties is to start with the current flow sheet, current configuration. We're permitted at 12 tons. That's the way we're set out. We'll run it that way initially, and for two reasons. One is just to get comfortable that what we can do in a lab will replicate itself there on the floor in the facility. And then secondly, we just need a little bit of sulfate that we can send to an auto company to qualify the product. We can't just, every spec, every battery has a slightly different specification required by the cobalt sulfate. And so we're talking to 3 automotive companies. Once we settle on a party, it'll be single sourced somewhere in North America. And at 12 tons, you'll be able to do that with a little bit more certainty. Produce cash flow starting as early as 12 months from today would be kind of the commissioning timeline we're looking towards. And that gives us a full year to get our expansion permits and then do the expansion to get to 55 tons. And whether we continue at 12 or stop and go at 55, we'll see. That'll all become clear in the next 6 months as we publish our feasibility study. And then the question I get from investors, of course, is, well, what does that mean for you guys? What's the commercial contract? Now, the commercial relationship will be a function of discussions that have to be held based on the costing of the feasibility study. But by comparison, if you look at what happens right now in the DRC miner captures about 70% on average of the cobalt content in the product mined, and then the balance, the 30%, is what the value is being captured over on the refining side over in China. And so if you take our projected scoping study, that would represent about $220 million of cobalt at a $20 cobalt price per annum running through our facility. A 70-30 implies $66 million of value that right now Glencore isn't getting. That gets lost when they sell their hydroxide to China. And so that's the nut we're trying to crack. Our current estimates are about $26 million in operating costs. It leaves a residual of $40 million. Take out a bit of sustaining capital and some taxes, and that's the allocated amount that Glencore and First Cobalt will share. And then the next question is, yeah, but Trent, you're a junior and Glencore is Glencore. And so I'd say stay tuned. We've got to see where this is going to net out. Our first few years, the first 4 years, while we pay back the $40 million loan that we anticipate requiring to put this together, we're likely going to be a toll treater. So we'll get paid a certain number of dollars on a per pound basis. And from that point, we'll find our way forward. So I'm down to my last minute. This is just where we would sit in the market, about 5% of global refining capacity if we do what we are planning to do. So we become a meaningful player right out of the gate. I do have some books outside the door, and I'm going to just finish a little bit with Idaho. We talk about security of supply, ex-DRC. Idaho, by far, is the most attractive jurisdiction we've seen in the world. The cobalt deposits here are smaller, but it's the only place outside of Morocco where you can get primary cobalt deposits. Our deposit at Iron Creek that you see in the bottom there, about 70% of the revenue would be cobalt on a sort of back of the envelope basis, 30% copper, and that's the inverse of the DRC. Of course, the deposits here are smaller, but all those blue dots are known cobalt showings. Formerly eCobalt, now Jervois, is up to the north. Glencore holds a legacy asset called Blackbird that operated during the Cold War era. This is a fabulous place for America to find cobalt, and probably the only sort of undiscovered or untapped jurisdiction kind of worldwide that warrants a lot more attention. But majors aren't doing it, so it'll require a stronger market for us to go back in and go at it. We do have a resource, but I'll let you lead that at your leisure. I thank you for your time.